kin to Moses, and did you go up on the mountain for this?
You know, I didn't, and no,
Yeah,
I
well,
am not.
and you didn't spend a lot of time with individuals in this community. In fact, the people that were in the room with me and others didn't take one note. This is purely a liberal example, and I hate to step back to our good friend here from Alabama, Hank Williams Jr., but you can keep your change.
I appreciate that. The plan adopted by the city council,
You want to fight, you get it.
the plan adopted by the city council calls for
They don't
these-
have a clue. Not a one of them has built a building or had a building destroyed in a storm.
You may well be right. They do have a clue in the sense that they felt they were following the community's interest in these areas. And
That is bullshit.
well, that's a conversation that needs to continue.
Well,
But let me assure you, at this point, the only people worth continuing that conversation with are the council members themselves.
I call it the unintended consequences of good intentions. You want to look at it in the best light.
Well, let's take it in that light then for a moment. The Mattress King is a welcome business in this area. We would like the Mattress King to be rebuilt on its site.
I challenge you to tell me, standing right here, any detail of the construction of that building.
I don't know a thing about it.
That's right, and you singled it out. You don't know that the striping was stamped in the concrete rather than painting the stripes on the ground. You don't know that it had a clay tile roof that's a 100-year roof, or if you go somewhere to Italy or somewhere, these roofs that last 500 years. You have no idea of the decorative lighting or the width of the sidewalks or the
You're exactly
irrigation
right.
that's in the sidewalks or the hanging baskets are in the decorative lighting, do you?
Okay?
You have no idea about what type storefront or door handles it had on that
I
building,
have
do you?
apologized. And
You
I
have
will
no idea
continue
how
to
much that
apologize.
slate cost around both of those front doors, do
And we
you?
want you to rebuild that building. We want you to rebuild that building and open
I
your
will
business.
unless a court of law says I can't.
Why
Not
would a
you.
court of law say you can't?
Well, I mean, you singled it out.
I singled it out only for its pattern. Its pattern was not that of a mixed-use walkable place.
You just said less than 5 minutes ago that the quarters of 15th and McFarland were necessarily handy, that would be pushed back.
Yes, that's
That building
correct.
is actually one bay of parking, not two
Perfect.
bays, but one bay of parking off of the street.
You know, you are making my case for me better than I possibly could. And I may stand here embarrassed before you, but the fact of the matter is the new rules sound like they apply perfectly to your building. And that therefore your building ought to be built back just like it was. And I would encourage you to consider that. I don't know where you stand in the permitting process, but I hope you will.
I stand confused like everybody in this room, whether there's a moratorium or there isn't a moratorium.
There is no moratorium.
This idea of running and throwing the downtown overlay out there on that part of the city to impede people from being able to rebuild their business in a timely manner.
Okay.
The people who did that should be ashamed to have not one penny invested in that.
Let's talk about that and make sure that we try to clear that up. One, there's no true moratorium, meaning nobody is banned from getting a building permit. You may get a building permit if you follow all the rules right now, and those include some temporary building standards which were borrowed from the downtown area. Those will go away when this new zoning is in place. And this new zoning, we hope, will continue to build buildings that have the right patterns and right
Well, you
forms
admit
in these places.
when it was intended to impede people from swiftly moving to rebuild on their property? What was the motivation?
I can't speak to the motivation of people that I
Each and every
didn't
time
personally know.
you get asked a difficult question, I don't know. Well, I can tell you, multi-story buildings cost a lot of money. You
They
do
do.
know.
They do. And what's the value of that property today? Higher than it was before the storm.
And when did you become an expert in property values when you weren't an expert in building costs?
I'm not an expert in building costs. I do know a little bit
I'll
about
tell you
property
what, you get your checkbook out, and if you think it's worth more than it was prior to the storm, you can own it before we leave here tonight.
value. We might just have to talk about that. It might be a good investment.
Well, I damn well challenge you.
Well,
Because you're talking to a guy that can sell it.
I appreciate that. We should talk. I'm gonna let somebody else take the floor. I don't want that conversation about the Mattress King to stop because I would like to look at your old site plan and see whether it meets the new rules. And if it meets,
I quite frankly don't need your opinion.
if it meets the new rules, one of the things we could do is use it as an example of how the new rules might work for other people along that frontage.
You already made your mind up on my building.
I made my
Only thing is,
mind
I
up
don't
about.
want seeing your name on the deed.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I've apologized, and I'll continue to apologize. Was there someone else tonight with a question?
I accept it.
Someone else? We'll be glad to answer specific questions about specific properties. Aaron is here to look at some of those if you'd like. We'll be continuing this discussion as we go through this. I'll be back in town several more times to talk about this. We'll be moving on to the residential districts soon, and there'll be a similar open house setting like this to discuss the residential districts on, do you know the date of that one?
October 27th at First United Methodist.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening, and we'll be glad to talk some more about specific properties if you'd like to.